that's how it was an actual surprise. So if you ever Google Steve Carell in Scranton, the thing's got millions of views by now on YouTube. The one dude is holding a camera, and we had convinced everybody he was not coming. I was quoted in the Scranton Times saying, "Do not buy a ticket to this if you think you're seeing Steve Carell."
Oh my gosh.
Like, we wanted to keep it a secret. And but the beauty of that was the people who were there were fans of The Office. It wasn't 40-year-old virgin fans. They were true Office fans, and that's what made it so special. Yeah.
So, like, I'm getting chills. This is the one word to describe all this is epic. That was totally just an epic thing to do. The convention, the wrap party, everything that you continue to do, like with NBC.
Welcome to Meeting Maggie, where we value each person's authenticity, whether it be over Starbucks or stargazing, and from fandom to fanfare. Season 2 of Meeting Maggie is all about the secret sauce of life. And as we discuss, they meet me, Maggie McGregor.
Hey everybody, I'm here today on the Meeting Maggie podcast with none other than Tim Holmes, CEO of the Everhart Museum of Natural History in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Tim has done so much with his career and he hails from Scranton, so I'm so excited to ask him questions about, his life. Tim, would you hit us with your Starbucks order first?
It's a great place to start. Thank you.
It's what I asked Andy Buckley, so I was like, I have to, keep it up with Tim.
Let's do it. I actually just got a call from Andy a minute ago, catching me up on some things after his visit last week. So mine is a large, I for some reason just have a hard time coming out and saying grande. A large, kind of dark roast with room for cream. I typically, in a very large one, will do 3 natural sugars and half and half.
Nice. Strong order. Strong order.
Yeah.
So the Holmes family hails from Scranton, right? Clan
Yes.
Holmes.
Mhm.
And where in Scranton were you born?
So we're North Scranton
That's
Homes.
what I
So
thought.
just off West Market Street. It's Leggett Street by Leggett's Creek,
Okay.
but we like to call it the Crick in North Scranton. So Leggett's Crick. I was one of 10. I am one of 10. I'm number 9 of 10. So much like the Doherty clan and a lot of the folks in your family,
Yeah.
we're a big Irish Catholic family, Holy Rosary
Right.
kind of family, exactly.
Yeah, so I always say, like, my outlook on having a big family is, like, I'm super blessed to have all that support and all that love. I don't know if you feel the same way, where there's some of your siblings who you were super close to. I'm the second in the birth order, so a little different, but...
Yeah. So we have, it's pretty awesome. So we were actually all in 1972, all 10 of us were in school the same
Get
year.
out!
So we were all pretty close. Oh yeah. So it's kind of Irish twins one after another. My sister Mary Ellen was a senior at Scranton Tech at the time, and my youngest sister, I was in kindergarten. My youngest sister Jane was in preschool. So all 10 of us, 1 year in school, and we just had the lunch bags were lined up on the oven, or on the stove, that my mother would crinkle up for everybody. We'd all be walking out the door. To me, it seemed perfectly normal, but
Right.
to think of it now is just absolutely outrageous.
So did you all take a bus to school, like, or did your mom have to drop you off, like, to all those schools?
We were never in a, it was never a drop-off thing. By the time it was middle school, we were all just walking everywhere, but there was a bus stop not far down the street that we would walk to. So many of my sisters started in Catholic school, so they were right at Holy Rosary. Myself, I was really the first that went public school, K through 12. I started at Neil Armstrong in North Scranton, through North Scranton, and Scranton Central. But it was a little mix. We were kind of in all the various schools throughout.
My mom had
Like,
like a 5 school drop off at one point. She had like
oh man.
Marywood Preschool, St. Clair's, St. Paul's, Scranton Prep. That's 4. So maybe it was Y Pals, yeah, at the Y. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's the 5th. But yeah, super fun having a big family.
it really
What is
is.
your favorite part of being part of such a big clan?
So it's a well a number of cool things about it. So as and I'll quote Monsignor Quinn with this one
Yes.
because the Quinn family is also a a big family here in Scranton, but he'll typically say it at the many funerals that we all go to because we all know so many people, and he'll say with a big family, um, joys are multiplied and sorrows are divided, and I think he's spot on with that.
Truly.
Just all the events we do when we get together. So we do Thanksgiving, all of us together. Now that the kids have all grown and we have 28 nieces and nephews and, kind of over 50 in our immediate family, we settled on at least a couple dates of the year. Thanksgiving is big for us, so we like rent out a place for
Nice.
Thanksgiving. So there's typically 70 or so of us there. And then Wildwood, we do that every year, kind of Father's Day weekend where we'll have about 70 or 80 of us down there. So all those big celebrations are pretty cool to have.
Amazing. I love seeing the photos of all of you on Facebook at like Wildwood or at maybe Thanksgiving.
Yep.
That's super fun, and no one has to cook. So,
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's crazy enough, we do all the cooking. It's usually a few of the brothers. My brother Mark, my brother Joe, my brother Paul gets a lot of the food for us. He works at a produce company, but we actually do it. The places we rent out and everything, they have their own kitchens, so we actually make a party out of that. So for Thanksgiving, we start the party the Wednesday before Thanksgiving Eve with a potato peeling and a carrot peeling kind of
yeah,
party.
that's so
Oh yeah, yeah.
fun.
We'll make a party out of anything in the Holmes family, and then it's all prepped for the next day. So it's a whole thing that adds to the fun.
Yeah,
Keeping that a part of it. Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Tim, do you have a favorite movie?
So one of our go-to favorites for the family is a movie called Rushmore.
Oh, I've
So I don't know
never
if you've
heard
heard
of
that.
that.
Yeah, you'll have to look that up. But
Yeah.
early kind of. I don't know if it's super early, but it's certainly early Wes Anderson. Just it's just so funny. Bill Murray's in it. There's just so many people you recognize,
Yeah.
but just that comedy. Just it was one of these like surprise movies that we remember watching. Our kids were young at the time, and a couple of the folks that we hang out with. Just we happened to do a night where we had a movie night at the house and watched it, and we still quote the thing every day. But there's so many movies from obviously The Godfather and all the
Yeah.
classics that we all love, but certainly Pulp Fiction and all those. We have a pretty broad array of things that we love in terms of movies for sure.
Super fun. Love that
Yeah,
recommendation. Um,
yeah, definitely Brent Rushmore. You'll laugh from beginning to
oh my
end. It's
gosh.
a
Yeah, I'm
riot.
definitely gonna look it
Yeah.
up. So where did you meet your wife, Chris?
Interesting. So this goes way back. So if you listen to Michelle Dempsey's podcast,
You're
Spark,
both gonna be on podcasts within a month.
yeah, hers was just released today, and she's never been interviewed, and I think this is kind of my first full length interview by myself, other than doing stuff with Michelle. Um, so she tells the story as well on Michelle, so you'll get to hear it inside there as well, and from her perspective. So Chrissy and I met when we were 12 and 13 years
Get
old.
out.
Yeah, back in middle school. So I hung out with her brother Matt at North Scranton Junior High, and the one day going down to his house down at Weston Field, hanging out with all our other buddies, I met his little sister Chrissy, who was a year behind us, and we just kind of hit it off. Then we were friends for a number of months and everything. But within about 6 months or so, we had our first date, and we had it in Greenridge.
Get out.
So you know where like Gannon's
Yeah.
is, and Dutch's is like so. There's a little VFW right there that used to like going on that street that used to host a carnival, like one of these little traveling carnivals, just a teeny little carnival with a Ferris wheel and a couple other little rides. But that was our first date. It was May 3rd,
Oh
1980.
my
We had our
gosh.
first date
You still remember the date?
right
That's
there.
amazing. That's amazing.
We had our 45th anniversary this year and our 40th anniversary of our wedding. So but we were also, we kind of didn't see one another through high school, but by the time, we were kind of finishing high school, starting college. We were 17 and 18, and we decided to get married because we had a we had a kid on the way. So, and we would do youth group for many many years, explaining people not to try this at home. But it worked out for us. Here we are, 40 years later, still doing our thing.
You have two wonderful children, Emily and Patrick.
Thank you so
Yeah, your
much.
kids are absolutely lovely. I went to high school with both of them and nothing
Yeah,
but great things to say. So well
great
done,
kids.
well
Yes.
done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Let's get a little bit into your career. So,
Sure.
do you want to start from like the beginning?
Sure,
Okay.
sure. That'd be great. Yeah. So, kind of go way, way back. Even before I met Chrissy, I was a paper boy for the Scranton Times. So my dad had worked there for 55 years and didn't really give us much of a choice. We were getting a paper out, even though we were still doing, North Scranton Vikings football and North Scranton Little League baseball and everything. My older brothers, Joe, Paul, Mark, all delivered papers. And when I was 7 years old, one of the streets, the Leggett Street, my brother Joe would hand me those papers, and we got used to working every single day, and that's just something we just, and I think it was good for your work ethic and everything to kind of get involved with stuff like that. So as a kid, I did it, took over the route. By the time they were all off and getting jobs at 15, 16 years old, by the time I was 12, 13, I took over the paper route, and my little sister Janie helped me as well. And so worked with the Times all during those years. Delivered pizza and some other things, by the time I was, 15, 16, worked in a produce warehouse. My brother-in-law owned Hunter Sabatelli Produce on Sanderson Ave, which was a fun place to work. But you appreciate work when you unload an entire flatbed of watermelons on a hot
Oh
summer
my
day. You,
gosh.
you begin to appreciate office work after you do something like that. But by the time I was a freshman in college, I was already a freshman at the University of Scranton, already expecting a kid, and my dad told me one day there was an opening at the Scranton Times doing like telemarketing, working evenings at the Times, and I got that job. I went in there and started selling subscriptions to the newspaper at night while I was going to school during the day. And while doing that, I did that for about a year and a half or so. A couple of the guys who were working at the Times heard me, who were like working late. So a guy named Paul Langan, a West Scranton guy, and Hal Marion, who a lot of people in Scranton know Hal, and a lot of people know Paul as well. Um, they heard me talking, and they knew I was Butch's kid, and they're just like, they had some ideas on some new jobs they were creating at the Times itself, and they asked me to come in and join the team. So all through the University of Scranton, I worked at the Scranton Times in a number of roles, working in their classified department, doing a bunch of things, and mostly sales. And by the time I graduated from the university in '88, because I was able to manage it in 4 years, working at the Times and raising the
That's
kids.
unbelievable.
Um, yeah, it was not easy,
I'm
but we made
sure.
it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and legitimately the Monday after I graduated, I started at the Scranton Times, and as a full time account rep. And within 1 year, they gave me my first opportunity to manage. Um, by 1989, I was running a little ad department at the Tunkhannock New Age Examiner, one of their mini little papers that they owned. And then a year or so after that, they allowed me to start my own newspaper up in a community weekly paper up in Oliphant, PA. So, by the time I was 22, 23, I had started my own little newspaper, and that little newspaper still exists to this day. It's called The Advantage. It's up
That's
in,
amazing.
it's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. The Times inserts it in the paper. It's just a very popular paper. It's all kind of chicken dinner, stuff, with things that are happening in the community, all good news stuff. And, and it was mostly to be able to sell ads kind of in that Mid Valley area. And, yeah, it was always a successful paper, and then Yeah, so but I ended up working with the Times for 35 years. So after starting that paper and doing that for 7 years, I was called kind of back downtown, worked in the circulation department, then went in and ultimately became the director of marketing and events for Time Shamrock.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
amazing. So did you work with Electric City when Electric City was going?
I did. Yeah, so I was the director of
That's what I
Electric
thought.
City.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So tell
yes,
me
yes.
about
So
that. Because I think I
yeah, that was
personally think if there was like a mayor of like an honorary mayor of Scranton, you would be it because you're always promoting the area to everyone. You truly are, and you just have you have the best like positivity about it. Some people are very negative about where we come from, and like I don't really buy that. But
agreed.
you're always selling it with like so much positivity.
Yeah, so I think it was certainly the way I was brought up. So we just always had a positive outlook
Right.
on Scranton. Now, I think my family reflects the reality of a lot of families in Scranton. About half of my family left, left town, settled elsewhere. So I've got a sister up in Boston, a brother in New Hampshire, another sister in Annapolis, another sister in Philadelphia, where the other half was stuck around in Scranton. But at no point did any of us ever hate on Scranton. We just, those who moved love coming back to visit because, of course, my mother, Molly, and Butch were here. So you can't help but love that. But those of us who are here, we always made it a point to make it a better place. We always saw the positive in everything. And so the role that I got at the Scranton Times, working with the Lynott family for all those years, they very generously, as I worked hard to do things, they generously put me into positions where I could actually make an impact. And Electric City was one of those examples. So around 1999, I took over as director of Electric City, as well as a number of the other papers that they owned at the time, the Northeast Business Journal and a bunch of other smaller papers. Wendy Mayapolsky, Wendy
Love
Butler, Wendy
Wendy.
Wilson, Wendy was just the greatest. So she and Mari Haggerty had already created what was a very good brand with Electric City, and I was brought in to kind of help with the production side and the ad sales side, and kind of managing where Wendy still maintained control over all the content that was going in and everything. But Electric City was just doing great things at the time, just really highlighting a lot of things that were happening. And you might know this guy, Chris Doherty, who had become mayor around this time, and he had this kind of restoring the pride was
Yeah.
his campaign promise, and it's basically the mantra that he lived by. And we at Electric City and all of us, and I also know a bunch of Dohertys and everything, but we embraced everything about that. And any opportunity we had, whether it was a run around Scranton or anything that might come up, Electric City put its full weight behind it. We would, put ads in the paper, write stories about it, anything to help promote all those positive things that were happening. And it's at this time that the downtown is having a resurgence. There's cool things happening downtown and all that fun stuff. So it was a very fun time to be there and also to kind of be a part of really directing that side of things. And I could get into a few of the events before we get into the other big ones at that time. You want to hear about
Yeah,
some of
no,
those?
definitely.
So we would do things every year. We called it Electric City's Best of. It was
Okay.
like we would pick the best of what's going on in the area. Wasn't anything we invented. Our one of our other alternative newspapers in Baltimore was doing these things, and this is happening nationwide. These alternative free weeklies would do these best of events and these like editions, but it gave an opportunity to really get to meet all the businesses in the area, and we would pick who had the best pizza, the best wings, and all this stuff. And we would always host these awesome parties that would kind of celebrate everything that was great about Scranton. So, I just think it was a good thing to be able to do that. And we also had the power of the Scranton Times behind us, where we would say, "Hey, this is happening," and people would see it in the Times, and they'd pick up Electric City to see who won. And we also had radio stations, with Rock 107 and stuff right upstairs, being able to help co-promote all these things. So we had that kind of media muscle to really get the word out on these events. So they were always super successful. And one of the bigger, more signature events we had, you may have heard about. I am now at the Everhart Museum. We'll get to that down the
Yeah.
line. But way, way back in the day, about around the year, I don't know, maybe 2002 or something like that, they did parties in the park. They kicked them off. So Wendy and a group of people were involved. I'm pretty sure your mom and a bunch of other people were involved with creating the original parties in the park here at the Everhart Museum, and they were amazing. Like a couple thousand people would show up on the lawn of the Everhart and do it. But they got to realize that, they got a little crazy. They're great happy hours, but the board at that time realized, that might be a little too much for us, because they are still trying to maintain a museum, and we still like to have fun events here and everything, but you also want to be sure you're, kind of keeping an eye on things. It's a 118-year-old business, so you don't want to be.
Being Irish is being able to throw an amazing party.
An amazing party, yeah. So when they were moving it from the Everhart, Sarah Hailstone at the time was Chris Doherty's, your uncle's. She was director of economic development at the time, and Sarah and I had already done a number of events together. But she and I kind of got together the one time where we're like, how do we replace these events? What can we do that can be kind of a signature event? And at the time, they were building the Casey parking garage across from the Hilton, right on Lackawanna Avenue. And I had seen on the Food Network or something a TV show where they had a rooftop party, and it was the easiest thing ever. They literally just threw out a red carpet on the top of a roof, brought in a band,
That's amazing.
just brought a bunch of booze up, and then just said, we're having a party. So they wanted to kind of promote the fact that this great new parking garage was coming downtown. I thought it was a great opportunity to tap into this market that already existed with these people looking for a big happy hour. So we hosted a party on top of the Casey parking garage. The week before, Sarah and I went all around town to all the local businesses and restaurants, and they all donated food and a bunch of stuff. But, we had T-shirts made saying we're going topless and all this kind of fun stuff. It was just, we really played into it well. Like almost 1,700 people showed up for a 2.5 hour. Pictures are unbelievable. I'll get them to you sometime. You'll have to see it.
Yeah, and if you still have a topless shirt, I'd love a photo. That would be.
I think Sarah held on to a few of those, but I'll definitely look for those. My wife might have one, so I'll check to see if we have them. But it was just amazing. Sarah, literally while the party's going on, had to call the engineer that built the garage, saying like,
"Are we okay?
Is this going to be a problem?" Because the picture Butchie Comedy shot, it was on the front page of the Scranton Times. He went over to the Hilton to shoot the picture from the roof of the Hilton. It was just absolutely amazing. And but the engineer said that. He's like, you're good. He just said, as long as everybody doesn't jump at one time. He's like, just don't play jump. Like he's telling them. So we had to tell the band not to do any kind of crazy songs that would get them all jumping. But another great Scranton story without dragging it out too long. But I had told the beer guys that I was working with at the time about how much beer they would go through at Everhart, for their parties in the park. And they would plow through like 20 halves of beer. And the beer guys told me I was crazy. They're like, we do, Race of the Saints for a full weekend, and we don't go through 20 half of Europe and Jessup. And I'm like, I'm telling you, they're going to move.
I'm telling you, the Holmeses could drink.
And all of our buddies, right? So they're like, listen, we're going to bring 12. Our office is right down the street. If you start running low, we'll run down and get more. And I'm like, that's fine, but I'm telling you, you're going to need it. Within 45 minutes, we're running out of beer with the 12 halves. And as you know, Adams Ave goes one way, but their beer store was the other way. So he had to get a police escort down to get more beer to bring it up.
Oh my gosh! That is such a great story.
It's such a great story. And it worked. Like we made it happen. Only in Scranton can something like that happen. And it's just one of these great things. And it was over by 7:30, 8 o'clock. And then everybody spilled into downtown and went into all the restaurants. So we were creating these events that would also then, bleed out into the city and just, and things like that just really give a really good boost to all the restaurants and stuff that were downtown. And, it was just a great way to kind of celebrate the city and the new advances with new parking garages and all the cool things that were happening downtown. So, yeah, that was kind of one of those signature events that happened at that time.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story. I'm so
Yeah.
happy you shared it with me because I hadn't heard it before. I remember a lot from the Restoring the Pride era, but I was still pretty young. So,
Yeah, you wouldn't have made it to
yeah.
that one. But that was a fundraiser. The first one was a fundraiser for Scranton Community Concerts. The next one was a fundraiser for the Scranton Public Library. So we would do it for all the local nonprofits. Like, that's what they were for, and we charge 10, 15 bucks or whatever to get in. And no, but they were just great nights. And from there, we began to do even bigger events where, eventually I was doing craft brew festivals in downtown Scranton, wine festivals. So the craft brew festival that happens to this very day up at Montage, we created that here in Scranton.
Wow.
Because those were things that were happening in Baltimore at the time, and and my daughter had just moved to Portland, Oregon at the time, and she's like, "Dad, this is the kind of cool stuff big cities do," and we were dealing with the same thing a lot of cities. Scranton at this time was dealing with something we always called brain drain, where the best and the brightest were leaving town,
Yeah.
and people like you and my daughter were not staying in town. They were leaving, and but I knew we needed to create things like brew festivals and wine festivals and stuff like that to make, give kids good reason why, this is a good place to settle down. Everybody always knew it was a good place to raise kids, so that happens a lot where people, by the time they get into their 30s and they know they want to have a family, they're moving back. But, we still wanted to grab onto that group. And those events are still running. The wine festival at Montage is still happening. But the first beer festival I did inside the Cultural Center. And we filled all 4 floors. We had different brewers on every single floor. It was just an amazing event, but sold out tickets, But when you're creating good things, it's, and people were following our events and they knew it. And then ultimately we created an Oktoberfest down at Mohegan Sun. So we're really kind of celebrating the region by that point.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's take a break from your career and talk about the office convention. From cold
Awesome.
to cool. Right? Wasn't that what the Wall Street
indeed.
Journal coined it?
I think it was the Philly
Philly
Inquirer or the Philly
okay.
Daily News. One of the Philly papers said that. Yeah. Yeah. Our favorite headline from the event.
So tell us.
So that.
This show came out.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
and they had reached out to the city, right? And but it was whose idea was it to have this party for the office?
Sure. So let's start off when Greg Daniels did reach out to the city. He would have contacted Chris Doherty to get Chris's blessing on featuring Scranton as basically the home of the office. And and Chris said, "Hey, if it's free publicity every Thursday night on NBC, whatever, let's do it." A young woman named Michelle Dempsey, who I did not know at the time, was a local architect who was one of those people who had just moved back to Scranton because she was seeing kind of this restoring of the pride that was happening here. And she was a big fan of the British version of The Office, the BBC version of The Office that had just come out in 2002, 2003.
Which is so funny because you rarely hear, "Oh, I started watching The Office from the British version."
It's a rare thing. Yeah. It's going to be one of the questions we ask. We're going to have like a little digital survey for people when they come to the new exhibit that we'll talk about later here at the Everhart. And, that's one of the questions I'm always curious about. When did you become a fan? Was it in 2002 with the original one, or was it 2020 during COVID when all of a sudden you started binging The Office? So, and I think that's more likely the case now than ever because there's more fans of The Office now than ever. But yeah, so going back, Chris Doherty says yes. Michelle Dempsey does not know Chris Doherty, reaches out to the mayor's office and says, "Have you ever seen The Office?" Because they really beat up on a town called Slough, which that was fictionally based on that Slough. Same kind of concept. It was outside of London, so that it was a satellite branch. So they were very, Ricky Gervais is brilliantly funny, but he tends to be mean-spirited. So they really beat up on Slough pretty bad. So she wanted the mayor to know the possibilities of what might happen. And he just said he's still willing to roll the dice and do his thing. And it happened. So now, a year later, we're all beginning, all of us in Scranton are now beginning to see license plates going through Scranton from the Carolinas and stuff like that, and it's just it's not typical in Scranton. So people are now already beginning to rubberneck around Scranton, and it was Michelle Dempsey who a year later recognizes that this show is starting to take fire, and she's the one who decides that there should be some type of convention here in Scranton, like a Star Trek type convention where we bring all the cast members and do this great party in Scranton. And so she called a meeting, with a bunch of friends of hers. She got, word to various people, and I had heard about this gathering. I think it was at the Banshee or one of the places downtown at the time. And about 30 people got together, and they all were firing out ideas of fun things that they're going to do for this convention. And she wrote it all down, put it all into a nice Word document, and there it sat for about 6 months. And I did not go to this meeting because I knew if I went to the meeting, I'd be in charge of this thing, and I wanted nothing to do with it. And so 6 months later, Sarah Hailstone is sitting in Chris Doherty's office at one of his meetings, one of his cabinet meetings, and ultimately at the end of the meeting, he says to Sarah, Sarah, what is it going to take that idea that is sitting in a Word document out onto the streets of Scranton? And Sarah said to Chris at that time, I think I need to connect Michelle Dempsey with Tim Holmes, and because we still hadn't met at that point. And he's like, well, let's see if we can make that happen. So Sarah called me, and I said, before I meet her and talk about this thing, I said, Chris, your boss, has to call my bosses, the Linets, and ask them if it's okay if I can help out with this thing, because I knew the kind of work it would be involved. And ultimately, he called the publishers of the paper, kind of laid it out what they're hoping to do, and asked if it'd be okay. And they said absolutely. They're all longtime friends of Chris Doherty, and they said it's fine. He could do that as long as he gets his day job done, which is what we did. And we got together and kind of boiled down what Michelle had created. Me, Michelle, and Sarah boiled it down to basically a single page ask that we managed through a bunch of different little connections to find out how to get a letter to Greg Daniels and get it onto his desk. And basically took it all down and said, listen, the office is amazing. We believe the fans are different. They really embrace this show. We need to get them all together. But it can't happen in LA. It can't happen in New York. It has to happen in Scranton. And ultimately, as we find out, when it got to Greg's desk, he said, that really plays well with the sensibilities of the show. I think we tried to make that happen. So we started planning. We started making it happen.
So was that exciting? Like, tell me what you were feeling like as that began, that journey. Because I'm sure there was a lot of preparation, and then it was like a days-long thing. Was there like a ton of excitement, or were you dreading it?
I was dreading. Yeah, I was mostly not. Michelle was very excited. I knew what we were getting into, and it was a nightmare. I lost like 17 pounds, and I didn't have 17 pounds to lose. It was 6 months of, just constant, just trying to feed it all together. Because what we were doing on our end was trying to build an understanding here in Scranton of what we were trying to create. Talking to the chamber, talking to the visitors bureau, talking to the mall at Steamtown, talking to the cultural center, talking to the University of Scranton, talking to everybody, and just telling them, listen, here's what we're envisioning. We want to get this together. We're trying to create like this kind of a 3-day weekend event. Already had a pretty good idea of some of the things we were going to do. I fortunately had a very good team working with me at the Scranton Times at the time. A guy named Matt Smith was now the editor of Electric City at this point. Wendy had moved on to other things. Tucker Hoddes, he was like our web guy at the set, so he was there to help us build a website. But like the back end side, like collecting money and everything. Eric Toffee created the design for everything. He was with us right there. Gene Patton, a bunch of others who were all with us working at the time. So I fortunately had a team who had done all these other events with me before, whether it be the rooftop party or the Electric City Best of. So they understood kind of my thinking with running these events. So as we're doing all this in Scranton, we're also trying to raise money, trying to get everybody to throw a few bucks into a pot, like the county, the city, everybody, but we knew we had to keep it simple. And NBC kind of liked what we were doing because they they could see that it was a homegrown thing. We weren't bringing in some outside organization to manage or try to peel cash out of this thing. They could see that it was really all kind of being done in house, and so I think that helped us in really selling them on doing this thing. So all while we're doing this, trying to get everybody in Scranton to believe that we can make this happen,
Which was not an easy
on
thing
the
at
other
that
side.
point. Like at that time
Just
in
not.
Scranton, it was just it felt kind of dry. Like people weren't eager
Oh,
to
absolutely.
invest in anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many believed we were right out of our minds.
Right.
They didn't believe for a second this was going to happen, and then going out to L.A. trying to convince the people. We're not talking directly with Greg Daniels at this point. They've got people who are like they're screening everything that we're doing, and just trying to keep an eye on just making sure we're not crazy and everything like that. So so we're trying to convince them that we got Scranton taken care of. We've got this all buttoned up. We're all a team. We're all going to make this awesome weekend happen. While they're out there, trying to decide whether they're going to put their name behind this thing. So it was very stressful just trying to get that all lined up. But ultimately, it was interesting. There was a guy named Kent Zabornak, who was one of the executive directors at the time, or an executive producer at the time. He told me at the convention in 2007 in October, it was maybe 2 or 3 months before that, he got on one of the conference calls, and he said he just in one of our quiet moments, he said he was listening in and he could tell, even if we didn't have everybody on board from Scranton, he could tell that I had a pretty good handle on what the weekend was going to look like. Because the things I would explain to them is, the beauty of Scranton, unlike New York and LA, we're all on the same page. So you can really wrap your head around the city. So, I was able to call meetings with University of Scranton security, with Scranton police, with the Pennsylvania State Police, with the marshal's office, like with the FBI office. Like, only in Scranton could you get, just put out a quick text or a note and say, hey, listen, we're all going to do this event. And they'll do that because you can really manage security well in a town like Scranton. That's why we have so many presidential visits. Like, we're used to those kind of things. And that's why, they had a little more confidence in the fact that we could pull it off. So yeah, ultimately, we get everything on board on our end in Scranton. We map out this entire weekend. And then legitimately, it was only about 4 weeks prior to the event. So the event was happening in October. And it wasn't until like late September that we got our first cast member to actually commit to coming to the event.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was 4 weeks out. We were already selling tickets, and we're telling people, we're just having a party in Scranton. Whether you make it or not, we're doing this thing. And it worked out. It worked out great. So that year, they also sent out Brian Baumgartner, guy who plays Kevin
Yes,
Malone on
yes.
the show, and Angela Kinsey plays Angela on the show. The two of them came out in May that year, so we were already like knee deep in the planning at that point, and they were also kind of there to scout us out, And the cool thing was, Rainn Wilson had come in 2002. He didn't love his visit, it was pretty wild what had happened. I think he was overwhelmed. He had never seen as many people. 2,500 people came out for an autograph session. I mean, there's no way to really manage something like that. So he felt it all kind of got a little out of control and everything, and that's certainly what he said to us, and it's what he told Brian and Angela. But Brian and Angela were just kind of kicking the tires, and they're like, no, I think these guys have a pretty good handle on things. So I had created another rooftop party. This one was on the Casey Medallion garage it was another new garage right next to the Hilton. And so they got to be there for that, which was a pretty cool event as well. And then we took them all around Scranton. We had them at the University of Scranton for this kind of senior night up there. They had a blast up there. They crashed a wedding at the Radisson that night. There's still footage that goes around the internet on them showing up at this wedding. When Brian does book signings here, the wife who was in that wedding often comes back, which is pretty cool. But then I also introduced him to the Bog in Scranton. And that's when he fell in love.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, that was it. That was like that night after we had done all the hits of all the different stuff we had. I had talked to Brian Craig. God rest his soul. We love Brian Craig. One of the original owners of the Bog. I had been talking to him throughout the day, and I'm like, listen, if I could convince them to come out late night, the Backyard Ale House was not open at this time. And I said, we want to, we'll get him into your place. I said, but what I need to do is get him behind your bar, which if you've been in the bog is a very difficult ask going through that front door
Yes.
to to the
Yeah.
bar. It's always pretty busy. You're not getting through that
No.
place. And we had set it up with Brian that he opened his beer delivery door out front. So when we pulled up in the limousine, it was probably midnight. Uh, they opened up the beer delivery door. We all went down into the
Oh
cellar
my
and came up
gosh.
right. And Brian spent the rest of the night bartending. Angela, had fun, but Brian he was just loving it. So that's the first time he really like bartended all night, and he went back, that week to the office, and he talked to everybody, and he's like, it's pretty awesome out there. We all have to get out there. So like that's what made it happen. And Brian was the first to commit. And there's a phone call that he makes to Michelle Dempsey about a couple weeks out, and he's helping us talk to all these cast members as we're sending notes to them all individually, and we're just hoping if we can get 5, we're going to be in great shape. And he apologizes and said, "Sorry, Michelle, I can only get 13 to come."
Oh my
And
god.
ultimately 15 of them showed up. So basically the entire ensemble cast, except for the Fab Four, Carell, Krasinski, Jenna Fisher, and Rainn Wilson, couldn't make it that weekend. But all the writers made it. It just was absolutely outrageous. And that's this 3-day weekend where Al Roker kicked off the weekend at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. on doing the weather from the University of Scranton on that Friday. And then it just went right through the weekend for an amazing weekend.
So that, like, I do
So-
remember. But if we could just, like,
Yeah.
go back to Brian Baumgartner bartending at the Bog, that's truly, like, a testament to you and you working your magic. Because to think of that idea and be like, this is how we're going to pitch him, like, this is how we're going to get him, like, that's just, like, your spidey sense and you being able to, like, make it work. And it did work. And it's just a true testament to what, like, a genius you are on promotion. Yeah, and late night
Well, that's
drinking.
awful generous of you.
No,
Thank you.
and yeah, late night beers.
Definitely helped. Well, I could get a sense from his personality and Angela's. It was just great. It's that you could just tell, what would make the most sense, and just introducing him to some real Scranton folks. This wasn't just some kind of chicken dinner thing that we were taking you to, where, it was, we took him out and showed him some of the fun parts. And cool thing about the Bog crowd is it's a chill group of people.
Yes.
So people aren't killing him and asking for autographs. They're like, yeah, I'll take a beer, and he felt so comfortable with it, and he just fell in love kind of with the entire vibe of it. And so now that's when he comes back, the backyard ale house is just a lot bigger now, so there's a lot more room to be able to do that stuff. And ultimately, we still able to sneak them into the Bog every now and again, but the backyard now serves as a great place to do that whenever they're ready to do that.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Let's jump into your friendship with Andy Buckley. So was that, like, was the antithesis of that at the first office convention? Is that where you met him?
Yeah,
I
that's
think
where we
that's
met him.
what he
It's
had told
another
me.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't want to drag this thing out too long. I'm sure you're tight on time, but so it all started. It's maybe 2 weeks out from the convention, and I'm sitting in my office at the Times, and I get a call from somebody I had no idea of, and I pick up the phone. At the front desk punching through, and it's him, and he's like, "Hey," and he's like, "My name is Andy Buckley. I'm in the show. I heard you're doing this convention out there in 2 weeks, and you have a bunch of cast members." And I'm like, "Yep, that's happening." And he's like, "Can I get my name on the list?" And I'm like, "Listen, we'd love to have you, but we ran out of money a long time ago. We just don't have any money to give you or even pay for your airfare or anything like that." I'm like, we're kind of crushing. I'm like, "But who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, it's kind of a new character. I'm like the corporate guy at the home office." And he's like, he had legitimately only been in a couple episodes at that point. And he's like, hey, I'd love to go there. I know that'd be a great weekend to get there. And I'm like, I just don't know if I can swing it. I'll see what I can do. And he's like, "Listen, I thought you might say that, so I have an idea for you." He's like, I know you're flying everybody out first class. He's like, "If I fly out coach and you give me the difference in the money, I can convince my wife that you want me there." And I just burst out laughing immediately. I went home that night and I told my wife, Chrissy, I said, I think I love this man. And, he was just joking around with it and everything. So I'm like, listen, I'll figure out a way to get you out here. Turns out when I got him out here, he was just so gracious. He was just the first one in the middle of the crowds, shaking hands and kissing babies. He's just such a sociable guy, but he legitimately got my name from a local Merrill Lynch guy.
From Roland Greco.
Because
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
So he called him, and he's like, "Do you know who is running this?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." Greco's like, "Yeah, it's Tim Holmes." So, but he did it because he was a Merrill Lynch guy at the time, and so he, but he always credits, if you ever listen to him on any other podcast, and he may have mentioned this to you as well. He goes back to that time, being able to spend that time with the writers, and them getting to know him better. He's pretty confident that that's what got them to write his character into the show more often, which is very cool. But then when he goes on to appear in the other guys and Veep and Bridesmaids and all these Jurassic World and all these other things, 9 times out of 10 he walks in and they're like, "Hey, you're the dude from The Office." Like but he always goes back to that weekend in October of 2007 that really kind of launched that, because he was able to quit his job, with Merrill Lynch and be a full-time actor for the first time after having done it for many, many years, without being able to do it full-time, which is pretty cool. So
That's amazing. So eventually you create the office wrap party when the office is wrapping.
Yes.
You get the Fab Four. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you want to speak at all to that, go ahead.
Well, I think it's important to say, so that party started in 2007. So as we're wrapping up the weekend in 2007, my wife and I went. Greg Daniels, I could see him at the end of the Sunday afternoon. Most everybody, we got him out of town, and Greg Daniels is sitting there, and he was getting like a later flight. And I see him on the front stoop of the Radisson. I'm like, "Greg, what are we planning here? What do you got going on?" And he's like, "I want to go to Cooper's." He's like, "Can you just tell me how to get over there?" I'm like, I had a million things I had to do. I'm like, "I will take you to Cooper's." So we get in his, crappy rental caravan that he had. My wife and I and Jen Zalata, one of the major writers, also jump in the van, and we go over to Cooper's, and we do lunch with Greg Daniels, which is still one of our favorite memories ever. But just watching their faces when they walked into Cooper's and just seeing it, and he immediately pulled out a camera and is filming everything, and they're literally coming up with show ideas. Like, as we walk in the one room, Jen Zalata's like, "This is Dwight's birthday party right here." Ultimately, it became one of the episodes. Like, they built a bunch of things around him, truly based on that. But in that lunch, I talked to Greg, and I'm like, "Greg, listen, I know you guys are very busy, and this was a crazy weekend, and it's not something that could be done every year. We understand that." I said, "But I knew at that time that they would always have wrap parties at the end of each season, where they would go to the Santa Monica Piers, where the whole cast would go out and everything." And I'm like, "I know you do these wrap parties, so should the show ever end, and we hope it never does, but if it does, would you consider bringing everybody here, partying at 30,000 feet and doing your wrap party here in Scranton?" And he put it in his head, and he kind of had it in mind. And then fast forward, to 2012, when they announced that it's going to be the last season, we did reach out, and Greg remembered, and he said, let's start planning, and we did.
Amazing.
So we started putting it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The Fab Four made it, right?
The Fab Four made it. What I promised them then, even for my own sanity, was that 3-day madness that we had will be shrunk into 1 day with just big, broad gestures. No sitting down autograph sessions, where it's hand-to-hand combat. I said, we'll give you a little parade in Scranton, and we'll just do something big. And I, wasn't sure exactly where it would be at the time, but ultimately it was at PNC Field. So we were able to manage exactly that. Weather was perfect. It was like, if you ever look at the footage of it, I was calling it Scran Diego that day. It was just like the perfect weather. All these people come rolling in. Now I knew, a couple weeks beforehand that Steve Carell was going to come. But I did not tell Michelle Dempsey. I did not tell my wife. I told nobody. It was me, Greg Daniels, and a guy named Steve. It'll come to me.
Right.
He was the new executive director, Steve Burgess, and So we kept it to ourselves. Many of the cast members had no idea, but the reason they wanted to keep it secret was two things. He was going to have a surprise appearance in the final episode, which he did show up in. So they wanted to keep that under wraps for a while. But also for my sake, I told them, listen, this parade, he is not invited. You know, I already had this meeting with the Scranton police and the state police and the federal marshals and all that stuff. I'm like, I just don't have confidence we could do this thing. Now I have the parade, like the Scranton St. Patrick's Parade Committee, which I'm on, is helping me with getting the cars and organizing the parade. And we get this great parade route going from the University of Scranton down to Courthouse Square. But there's 20,000 people, and we have this beautiful line, 40 feet wide down Linden Street, which is going to like house this parade. But the first guy I had going down was in the back of a pickup truck, was Craig Robinson. And at the very top of Linden Street, as you can see, and me and Chris Doherty are standing on the showmobile as this parade is about to start. And Craig Robinson stands up and he starts going like this to the crowd, telling them all to move in.
Oh
He wanted them closer to him. So I can watch I'm standing on the showmobile at the top and I see the entire parade route collapse on itself. And these things are, oh my God, yeah. So when you see the footage of me elbowing 18-year-old girls to get them off John Krasinski, it's because of Craig Robinson. But it just was a wonderful parade, but no way was it going to work with Steve Carell. And so, we finished down to Courthouse Square, had this amazing concert in downtown Square. We had a guy named Bob Thiel. He actually wrote the theme song for The Office. His band was playing there. We had them in 2007 as well.
The Scrantones, right?
2007.
The Scranton.
What's
the
that?
Scrantones, right?
Well, you'll see him appear as the Scrantones and Scrantonicity. Like, he played in a lot of those, doing little cameos, but he actually did the theme song. And so he was a great guy to have. He was a great resource to have. But, like, in 2007, when he came, one of his bandmates was a guy from Weezer. I'm not even sure who the guy's name was, but they just showed up. I had no idea until the guy showed up. But he's playing up there. But all these other people on the show, they're all great musicians, and they're all singing and having a blast. So this is at, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we cut that off because we're going up to PNC Field. So we all go back to the Radisson, and I tell all the cast members, everybody, just go to the rooms, chill out for an hour, because by 6 o'clock we got to be working ourselves up to PNC Field. So at 5 o'clock we had it planned, Steve Burgess and I, where we've got Carell coming in at 5 o'clock and being dropped off. So and that's when the first time I told my committee who was working with me. I literally at 5 o'clock, after finishing all that, I said, we're now going to DEF CON 5, and they saw it. And Steve came rolling in his car, and I had him come around the back of the Radisson. We snuck him up the back steps, through the hospitality suite, and into his own room so he could get changed and everything. And I saw, when we pulled him into the happy hour, into the hospitality suite with all the other cast members, half of them had no idea he was coming, and they lost their minds.
That's what I was about to say.
It was cool.
Did your committee lose their minds?
It was like my brother Joe, he doesn't lose his mind over stuff, and a few other people, some of them were losing their minds, and I'm like, keep your trap shut. It's still, it's early days of social media for old guys like me, and I'm like, nothing gets posted, nothing like that. And but they all kept it a secret, which was cool. But I could tell Krasinski, Rainn Wilson, Baumgartner knew Steve was coming. But I could see Phyllis had no idea, and Kate and a bunch of the others had not a clue. So they were blown away when he showed up. And then we all packed into these cars, and it was kind of a fun thing because a lot of family was there. Ellie Kemper, her sister, Carrie Kemper, is a writer for the show. Her parents are there. Rainn Wilson's mom is there. We have all these. Oh, yeah, it was just wild. So I set up I would say this was a brilliant little decoy. So I had these big white limo buses. So I had put all the family in these big white limo buses, and I sent them up first as the decoy. So when they got up to PNC Field, they drove right up the center and went right to the front door, because that's the access to the VIP area where we had all them guys sitting. And as they got to the front door up there, all the crowd surrounded them. And after we got them through, all the black SUVs with all the cast members snuck around the back, and we took them in the door where the players go around back. So we managed all that. So that's how it was an actual surprise. So if you ever Google Steve Carell in Scranton, the thing's got millions of views by now on YouTube. the one dude is holding a camera, and we had convinced everybody he was not coming. I was quoted in the Scranton Times saying, "Do not buy a ticket to this if you think you're seeing Steve
Oh
Carell."
my gosh.
Like, we wanted to keep it a secret, and but the beauty of that was the people who were there were fans of The Office. It wasn't 40-year-old virgin fans; they were true Office fans, and that's what made it so special. Yeah.
So, like, I'm getting chills. This is the one word to describe all of this is epic. That was totally just an epic thing to do. The convention, the wrap party, everything that you continued to do, like with NBC and The Office. But we got to talk about the But we got to talk about the Everhart a little bit. So,
Sure.
So Tim is the CEO of the Everhart, and the Everhart has changed. Like, it's definitely totally different since you've been there. Community days, exercise classes, like people are in the museum constantly. And like, first of all, what is your favorite event that goes on at the museum that you've added?
Okay.
Because there's so many.
There's a lot. There's a lot. So yeah, so I just started here. It will be 2 years in a couple months.
Yeah.
So yeah, after I had worked 35 years at the Times, I kind of did a little pacer break getting into the finance world, like Buckley, the same thing. But I knew ultimately I'd like to get back to something, and it was actually Sarah Hailstone who had heard that this position had opened, and I had never really considered it, but it kind of scratches an itch where I get to kind of do the best of both worlds. Where I always loved helping the local nonprofits and doing stuff like that, but doing it for a 118-year-old institution in Scranton just really made a lot of sense to me. Interestingly, I had to really kind of sell the board on it because I'm not a museum guy. I don't know anything about art, but I also made that very clear to them. But I think that's I think that's the benefit I bring as director here, or CEO as they call me. I'm not the curator. We have a guy here, James Lansing is awesome. He started right around the same time, and I think that was always a problem here, that they'd always have a director who wanted to be a curator and a curator who wanted to be a director, and there was battles with that. We both know our lanes. I throw the beer parties and make a bunch of that stuff happen, and he sets up the art, and we get people to look at it. So it's a great little thing we have, and I brought up early on the idea of doing something with the office to him and to the board, and they agreed. If it's something, it may not be art as we understand it. As James says, it is pop art though, and that's the kind of stuff that really hits kind of the heart of the bell curve. But he also understands if it's going to get us national attention and get people here to see all the amazing local artists and everything that we have on display, it's just like kind of a win-win. But in terms of the new stuff, yeah, we're doing yoga classes here. We did a silent disco at the Fringe Festival last year. We're doing as many partnerships as we can. The free community days we do are just amazing. We had 700-800 kids here last weekend for a free community day, where we were doing a bunch of stuff with them with arts and crafts and everything. We do bus trips now into New York City and Philly. That's kind of one of my favorite new things, because people love that. I think it just makes sense that the museum is that kind of link to the art. So we've been to the Barnes Foundation, and I'm seeing a lot of these places for the first time myself as well. This weekend we're going to the Brooklyn Museum. The trips are selling out like immediately when we set them up. We just need more buses to be able to do it, which is cool. So, but it shows we're doing them right. So, but all those things combined add up to a lot more energy and excitement here at the museum, and we want to continue that. So this new exhibit that you got to see it last week, it's just a very sneak peek. We still have a lot to do, but by the end of this month, we'll be pretty solid. The doors will open, and you can tell me, what do you think so far of the layout?
Yeah, everybody listening, you should definitely go visit the exhibit. It's beautiful. It's amazing. You have original like props from the office, the costumes from the office. You have the pen paper sign. It really is a testament to you and Michelle and the teamwork that goes on at the Everhart, because I didn't see anything missing. Like you're saying you have more work to do, but it was fantastic. It really was.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, so we have, all those little cabinets, we're going to have personalities all in there. We're going to be changing them constantly. But you're right, when you mentioned the NBC props, these are actual outfits that they wore on the show. We have, one of my favorite things is a Ricky Gervais suit. So Ricky Gervais is the original. He and Stephen Burton created the original Office. He did a cameo, back when Carell was leaving, and it's just perfect. So we have that. That is the very first suit you'll see when you walk in. But you'll see when it's complete, you'll see an actual picture of Ricky in that thing. This is just stuff we have to get approved by NBC, so it's kind of going through all those phases right now. But no, NBC, like early on, I reached out to Greg Daniels when I started here, and he gave me the blessing to do this thing, and he said nothing would make him more proud than having an exhibit for the office in Scranton. And we were talking, this year's the 20th year of the 20th anniversary of the first season. And so he then tells his people, you pick up the phone when Tim Holmes calls, and that's pretty cool. And he knew Michelle and I were doing it together, and he knows Michelle is a consummate professional. So, basically, Michelle and I just kind of put our heads together. We have a very good sense of having done tours and done so many things for so many years of what would make sense. And we really wanted to talk about, in this exhibit, Scranton's connection to the office. Why Greg Daniels chose Scranton to be the home of the office. Like, all of that you will find out when you come to this. And it goes back, timelines, going back to Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant doing this thing. So all of those things are cool, but all the personality involved, that, like those file cabinet drawer things that you saw in the one room, like every one of them is going to have a person. It's not just the actors, it's all the writers and all the other key personnel. Like, one of our favorites is a guy named Phil Shea, who worked every year with Maury Potus from the Scranton Chamber, and I worked with him quite a bit at the Scranton Times. And all those Scranton props that are in the show, he's the guy who put them there. So he had passed away, so we're gonna have a little memorial, like a memoriam for him. Just the sweetest guy ever. But we got to know a lot of people on the set, which was really cool. A lot of that support personnel who made it all happen. So that's what people will see. And yeah, the pen paper from the original tower. When I was talking to Doug Fink a couple weeks ago about what we're doing, he's like, "Hey, do you want that thing?" So we have it in the museum now. So it is. Michelle Dempsey did all the designs on it. It's so being able to have a in-house architect helps quite a bit and everything. But we have just beautiful space at the museum, but it's just kind of in the one wing of the second floor. So there's still plenty of great things to see at the museum. So yeah, we're hoping people are going to come from kind of all over the world. We're already getting notes from people who had already booked a trip from California to be here next week, and they were hoping it was going to be open. But we'll give them a tour and get them through the place. But we're going to wait till we're fully open before we kind of say it's open.
Yeah. So one final question, like, you have this amazing spirit of giving back to the community, and where was that instilled in you?
So I think it goes back to, well, number one, my parents and my family. It's something we've kind of done forever. Even within our own family, there's, we grew up in half a double in North Scranton, so you can't be very selfish when you when you're living in a place that is. You kind of learn to work with people. So we learned that early on. But I would say, certainly going to Holy Rosary was kind of a big part of it for both my wife and I, where Monsignor Kelly had reached out to us when we were young kids, having a young family, and asked us to work with the youth group at Holy Rosary. And we did that for decades. As our kids were growing up, the kids we had in the youth group that we were kind of influencing were now becoming influences for our children, and we're always happy about that. But we always, we soon found out that in a place like Scranton, you can make a big impact in a small city like this. So the more we gave, the more we kind of felt we got back. So whether it was working with my wife was, president of the board at St. Joseph Center for years, we've helped with that. But even working with with Time Shamrock for 35 years, the Lineup family always said, we're going to be active and identifiable in the communities we serve. So that was part of their mantra. So they kind of bred that into us. And so it kind of played well with kind of everything I was doing, both professionally and personally. So, we just continue to do it now to this day.
Well, that's amazing, and it's an amazing way to go through life. It's an amazing attitude to have, and Scranton's so lucky to have you. The Everhart is so lucky to have you. And everybody follow Style Mag and Meeting Maggie. I will share with the exhibit is live and open to the public. It's a fantastic exhibit. Everybody should go. And Tim, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for tuning in to Meeting Maggie.
Absolutely.